So this week we are talking about, you actually have some options in what you want to talk about. If you have your question for next week, you can share that, or if you would like to talk about your post that was due on Sunday and submitted by me today, then you can talk about that too. So I'm going to let Justin begin because he was first here. And then we'll have Liz talk and I will share if there's time at the end. So again, Justin, either what question you want next time or the direction that you're taking your blog post, your most recent blog post.
Okay, well, I will start with you beat me. I haven't done my blog post yet. I'm working on it to get posted tonight, which I will start with that one, and I'm trying to bring it up here. Sorry. That started off as a really dry one. It was talking about critical thinking skills, and I was having a hard time going between was it really a peer coaching what I was coming up with, because it kept being on me of what I needed to do versus like more of a coaching role and having the teacher do it. So one that I was coming back to that I liked a lot was, let me post the link for it. It was a video on Teaching Channel, which I kind of forget about that resource until I come across it again. And here we go. And when I come across it, I realize how, and they're not always huge fancy lessons. Like this one was just a 5-minute video showing how this teacher, she was 5th grade teacher, using picture books as a touchstone text for a unit concepts. And I really like that idea of using picture books as simplifying a complex thing, but also forcing the kids to think of it in multiple layers, I guess. And I think picture books are a good way to do that. And it got me thinking that's something I could do pretty easily during my brief time with the kids when I actually see them. I only see them for 30 minutes a week, so this would be something that I could do that would tie in with the unit that the teacher would do, and it would be something that the teacher could use and refer back to in their class. And then that led to Edutopia, as always, using Aesop's fables for critical thinking skills too. I was thinking at first when I started was critical thinking, making the 5th graders, really analyze and do all sorts of high level thinking, and then I kept coming back to the story could be a good way to do that instead, because so often the 5th graders think that they're above picture books and stories, and the Aesop's fables are timeless for a reason, because they're really good at making you think about multiple layers. So those are my two. Yes, some of the grades used Lucy Calkins. And some of the teachers within some of the grades, and we're also doing a literacy adoption for some stuff too. 5th grade does not. So that's where I am. But my fear was that it wasn't enough. It was more me doing it for them. So I'm wondering if me showing that video and talking through that with the teachers, would you think that's considered enough peer coaching, even if I end up doing some of it for them? Does that make sense?
I think that I'm learning that in this group, we're trying so hard to make it when Alex and I were just talking, we work so hard to have these really conversations that are considering all those elements of good collaboration. And I think you, at a certain point, just have to start with where you're at with your group. And I think that, I'll talk about it a little later if there's time, but I know that that's something I'm trying to focus down on, because I don't want to get so far ahead that I find myself frustrated when I'm like, I'm doing everything right. Not that that would ever happen, but like, I'm doing all these things. I'm listening and asking questions, and like nothing's happening. So I think that like there's definitely a balance there of like, I'm gonna, with this peer coaching scenario, because like I'm noticing this in my with the person I'm working with, where like I am trying to help her feel more empowered to use technology on her own. And so I've helped her start to feel more confident with Google Classroom. But then we use this program called Homeroom Premium to enter data. And she like called me and she's like, I need you to come down and help me do this. And I've helped her do this 4 times a year for the past 3 years. And there's no reason that she's more than capable of doing it on her own. But we have that habit. And so I'm like, little victory on Google Classroom, but oh yeah, it's still that same pattern. So I think that, yeah, lots of learned helplessness with mine. But I think that I guess I would say that like pick a skill that you want to try out. Maybe it's asking more questions instead of telling them what to do, or maybe it's just trying to more actively listen, or going through, like, use that guide that we just did as a way to get in the conversation. But I personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with just picking something small and building on it, instead of like having that attitude that everything has to go perfectly and you have to follow every rule of good discussions.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
And I don't know exactly what the lesson is, but I also, and you're a librarian, so this might be ridiculous to suggest, but I teach a lot with Disney shorts. Like when I'm teaching about theme, I play Disney shorts, and then we talk about the message or moral of the Disney short, and then we build theme from that. And I also use a lot of podcasts, and we focus on listening skills. So I don't know if those would work for your purpose, but looking at other types of stories might be a good way to diversify it a little bit.
So one of the reasons why I asked about what your teachers use in terms of their curriculum is because yesterday I was down in Portland visiting a school that my friend's working at now. She's working there as their technology, like educational technology director. And one of the things that she's been tasked with doing is the school just did this whole, and it's a middle school, just did a whole Lucy Calkins adoption. And the teachers really are overwhelmed with the resources that they have available to them. And they're not using most of the things that they have available to them. And so basically, she is trying to coach teachers in thinking how they can begin to integrate some of the online resources, some of the, resources that are available to them online. And so I was trying to, I guess, I know her stuff is really intense. And so I was trying to figure, like, that's why I asked. So just like, if your school is using Lucy Calkins, you might not, because we were talking about not wanting to do the work for them. And so I was thinking, okay, like, you're maybe adding something when maybe you don't need to, by adding the stories or going out and finding the stories to add to the existing curriculum. There might actually be like materials within their curriculum. But if the fifth grade's not using Lucy Calkins, what are they using?
We've got It's Good Habits, Great Readers, and a couple of other things.
Do they have does the teacher use all of the resources for that program?
Yeah, and they're always looking for extra stuff. And we've got Lucy Calkins for some lower grades, but it doesn't get used a lot because there's just not the time to do the full meal deal on her stuff. So
yeah, it's really intense.
Yeah.
That's crazy. She actually now offers up curated classroom libraries. And that district totally like bought, they're drinking that Kool-Aid too. And so basically they now have, all of their classrooms now have like 200 books in their classroom libraries, which they had none before. So it's a good thing. And they used to teach with whole class novels, which they don't anymore. But now you have teachers who are like, oh my gosh, I now have to read 200 books, right? So that yeah, it's kind of funny. So that was just, anyway, that was just an idea. But it sounds like you are on the right track, though, with finding things that you can provide to supplement the teacher's curriculum. Yeah, I think the thing is going to be is that while you may be reading those stories to the kids in your library time, almost helping to extend the amount of literacy time for this teacher's lessons, you might want to say, okay, so I'm doing this, you're doing that. How, like I have 30 minutes, you have more class time. How are you going to change what you do in class to be referencing or incorporating what I'm doing in library? So that might be a question to ask, right? To give the teacher some work to do.
I'll write about it in my blog post that I turn in 3 months.
It's okay.
Or tonight.
No, it's okay. I get anxious. I'm totally like, don't worry. I was just basically, I've had a lot on my mind and a lot to do, right? The last couple of days. I do not mind. I just always get anxious that I'm going to forget and you guys are going to post them. And my Google Plus has like other things in it now too, with like common sense and all that stuff. So I'm afraid it's going to get buried and I'm going to forget to reply.
I'll email you guys when I get it on there. Thank you for your patience.
No trouble. Very cool.
So, Liz, if you want to either share, I don't know if, because it is ways out, if you have your next question ready, or if you want to share your resolution in your blog post, either would be good.
I do not want to share my resolution in my blog post because I'm kind of ready to let the whole 21st century literacies and that giant matrix just to, put it to bed for a little bit. Because I just really, it was very overwhelming. And it really was for me kind of a thing like, oh my gosh, we're there's so much, right? All these places, they just need to, it's kind of like almost like a Rodney King moment. Like, can't we just all get along? Like, can't there just be like one like set of standards, right? When are we going to actually get to a point where we don't have every organization with their own set of standards that we now have to align, right? And so it's just with each other. So yeah, let's put that up to rest. But the next question, though, we're going to come up with some interesting questions, like what skills, resources, and processes will you use as you co-plan learning activities that your learning partners want to improve? And for me, I don't know if I'm going to focus on this, but one of the things that was sticking out is what this whole program has been about is making sure that the pedagogy drives the technological choices, and that we're always trying to think about how the choices we're making for all of these, no matter what quadrant we're in, is leading to a better product, like a better learning experience for the students. But then I guess it ties in a little bit to the standards, also making sure that we're able to defend our choices by being able to tell our administrators and other people that we're evaluating that we're meeting standards as well. And so kind of trying to tie that in together. What do you guys think? Have you guys checked that out yet or no?
I wrote my question, and I'm struggling because I think that a lot of the resources that I'm finding really valuable are a lot of the things from Les's book, and he already has a lot of charts or like the documents that they've given us on like probing questions. And so it's like a lot of the things, it's like I feel like I'm just going and looking for something similar that I find on my own, instead of like really, and then it's just summary. So I'm thinking like my question for this next one was what prompting questions or similar resources are available to use when co-planning learning activities. But I'm thinking what I might do is kind of take a big step sideways from that and take like one of the elements from the chart that we've been going over, like that we just did with our groups. I'm really interested in, I think just because there were some questions about it in our library assignment for the week, but like I'm interested in looking at how we can like embed student choice and like amp up engagement without like what's the balance, and like that was something that came up in our library class, but like what's and that was something that I posed because one of the readings made the claim that students are bored and hate school, which I commented on because I was like, okay, well, how do you know that? Like, that's a big statement to say without any backing. Not that I disagree, but it's just a big thing to say. So I want to look at like how do we balance student choice with learning objectives. So I'm thinking I might end up looking deeper at some of our resources from the library program and using those to look at that engaged learning section of the climate. So I'm like, my question was about questioning, but I feel like you've done a post about questioning, Liz. I think Shannon did a post about questioning. I think that like, I don't remember who else. So I'm like, I feel like that's just been done. So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm going with it, is just taking one of those branches and looking at how I can use that as a resource. And then, like I said, finding the balance of like, if I want to do more project-based learning or inquiry-based learning and give students that choice, like how do I balance that with the necessary instruction to like get them through the project?
Right.
So
I was looking at doing, which is really lame, but collaborating with Google Docs. But I don't know how to present that without it just being like horribly lame. But as far as
why do you think it's lame?
well, because like we've used it for so long, so now it's lame for us because it's like Google Docs. But
I'd honestly love to see a resource because like I think that things like they seem kind of overdone for us, but I know like teachers at my school, like I was telling a student that, you know, talking to them about how I had someone straight up lie to me about getting an assignment done, and I was like, okay, well, I'll go and check the revision history, and like she'd never heard of that before. Or I had another group project where I was like, oh, that's done, okay, I'll go and make sure that you actually collaborated on that because I didn't see any of that happening. And they're like, well, I'll turn that in a little later. So I think that like while that stuff is like known to us, it's something that other teachers don't see. So honestly, I would love it if you made like a really awesome resource on how to use like some of those advanced features of Google Docs for collaborating and then for like scoring. And like include something on like the switching from commenting to suggesting mode, or editing to suggesting, so that you can actually track the changes. Just something with like, you know, 3 or 4 of those basic, like you must know this, or like the research tool in Google Docs, or like just a few of those things. I'd pass it on to my staff gladly.
I think so, Hannah. Are you talking about using Google Docs with students?
Yeah. Well, you mean like for collaborating?
I think Justin, are you talking about using Google Docs to collaborate with your peer?
Yeah, well, and in listening to that, I guess it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
No, that's a good point to make, because I kind of started with that idea and started talking about students, because that's where my mind is at. Like, I didn't do my blog post because I'm like, I neglected my students so much in the past when I've had homework, and I like cannot get that habit this year. So my mind is students, but I think it could work for either. Like,
I also think too, like when I think about writing my blog posts for this course, I'm writing them for you guys. I'm writing them for David and whoever the other teacher is in the course. But I also really feel I post mine to Twitter. And I share them out with a wider audience because I want it to be beyond you guys and beyond David. And so you can think that you actually are creating, you're writing this blog post for people who don't use Google Docs to collaborate. And this goes back, I think you were trying to think about ways that librarians can talk to each other, right? And if they can use Google or some kind of platform like that to collaborate and talk with each other. And so this kind of almost harkens back. You could probably even say, like, as I stated in my blog post, and like reference your old blog post, right? In your new blog post. That would be really cool. And so, you know, it would, I think yeah, don't think about it being played out in this course. If you're doing something that would be new to teachers outside of this course, totally do it, right? Yeah.
Well, and you could easily, like, you know, I think you could get more than enough on that, but you can always talk about, like, how could you collaborate using Google Hangouts with teachers from other schools or other districts? Like, I know that most of our meetings still take place. Like, for my tech mentor meeting, we have representatives from every school in the district, and they still take place where we all come together. So we have to meet later. A lot of people can't make it because they could only come to half of it, and why drive all the way, you know, it's not a big town, but why drive all the way across town to come for 15 minutes? So maybe looking at, like, how to use Hangouts for collaboration too would be an interesting resource.
Yeah, and also too, think about it. So you're doing this with the teacher that you're, you know, here, you're improving this learning activity. And then what if she goes and then shares that document for collaboration with other fifth grade teachers, either at your school or even at another school in your district? And then all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of teachers that are using Google Docs to improve these learning activities, right? And so it's exponential, right? And so I think it's a good idea.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
So we are out of time, so we can end the conversation. Although now my brain's spinning as always. I'm excited to see what Justin comes up with, and might now make some resources on whatever we just talked about that you don't end up writing about, because I think those are some awesome ideas. Otherwise, I will post this. Any closing comments or questions? Awesome.
Nope, thank you.
All right, I will see you guys next week.
And are we done then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we done.
Yeah.
I'm going to bed.
Yeah, okay, good.
See you guys later.
Good night.